Hey, how's it going, everyone? These are some of the films I watched in February that I felt strongly enough about to want to share my thoughts with you. First up is The Nightmare, directed by Rodney Asher. It's a documentary that interviews several people about their experiences with sleep paralysis. I've never experienced it myself, but the subject is very intriguing. The amount of people that claim that sleep paralysis has impacted their life and the stories they tell can be unnerving. The reenactments, despite being pretty low in budget, were decently creepy at times. The score from Jonathan Snipes ties everything together perfectly and really makes the atmosphere eerie. I picked this up on Blu-ray from Amazon. If you like indie documentaries, his latest one, A Glitch in the Matrix, is one of the best I've ever seen. I also saw The Dentist 1 and 2, directed by Brian Yuzna. It's basically a child's wildest fear of a dentist come true. Growing up, I watched Psych a lot, so I was used to seeing Corbin Burnson as more of a serious father character, so it was really fun to see him play a cheesy murderer. The humor was often corny, but I really liked it. The sequel was actually just as good or even better than the original, so that was a pleasant surprise. I wish the kills were a bit gorier just to be even more over the top, but the close-up shots of him demolishing people's teeth were pretty gruesome. I picked up this new dual-pack Blu-ray from Best Buy. Next, I watched The Menu, directed by Mark Mylod. Anya Taylor-Joy and Ralph Fiennes deliver fantastic performances as usual. I loved how serious Nicholas Holt's character is about food and the whole dining spectacle. I wish it was a bit longer to dive into those aspects more, because my favorite parts were when they were talking grandiosely about the dishes. There's a lot you can unpack about the social commentary of the wealthy versus the poor. If you put too much more commentary in, then it might be too on the nose and cringy. But if they took some out, then it would be a missed opportunity, so I think they struck a fine balance. I think they could have made the side characters a bit more interesting as well, but they served their purpose. I got this from Blu-ray off Amazon. Another film I watched was Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, directed by Guy Ritchie. This was his first feature film, and it's an incredible debut of his directing and writing talent. The plot starts with a group of friends pooling their money together to play at a high-stakes poker table, and then they get into debt and have to pay back a mobster $500,000 in 1 week. There are several groups of characters that weave into each other's lives in really fun ways. I can't imagine how hard it was for Guy Ritchie to get it all in order when he was writing, but he nails it. It's great to see an early adaptation of his unique style. I bought this on Blu-ray off Amazon, and I'd love to see it get a new 4K transfer at some point. I also saw the Chernobyl miniseries directed by Johan Renck. This series is crafted so well, and you can tell a lot of time and skill went into creating it. The entire cast was astounding, and I believe that every actor was their character's profession. I'm not much of a science buff, so I know a lot of the technical aspects being explained went over my head, but it still captivated me. It's incredible what human beings are capable of, and even though this is an instance of tragedy, I was just in awe at what science and innovation can accomplish and create. I picked up the physical 4K release of this.
Every lie we tell incurs a debt to the truth. Sooner or later, that debt is paid.
Next, I watched Violent Night on Peacock TV, directed by Tommy Wirkola. This was a little better than your average horror comedy because some of the stunt work and special effects were pretty cool. Maybe I just wasn't in the mood, but I wasn't a big fan of the characters or the directing style, but I really wasn't expecting much. For me, it was just really forgettable, and I kinda wish I spent my time watching something else. Next, I rewatched the Preacher TV series, developed for TV by Seth Rogen, Evan Goldberg, and Sam Catlin. This is one of the most perfect castings and comic book adaptations ever. The synopsis is that a power called Genesis escapes from heaven and finds its way into a preacher, Jesse Custer. It now grants him the power to make people do literally whatever he says. And with his dark past, he uses it in ways that range from the helpful and comedic to outright horrific at times.
Mace your balls.
His main goal is to find God, who has left his throne and is now wandering the earth. The world Garth Ennis created here is so unique and generates scenarios that couldn't exist anywhere else. This universe makes way for commentary and explorations of religion and moral beliefs that you can continuously ponder over. If you like comedic critiques of religion, I'd also recommend a book called The Story of God by Krith Matheson. I bought each season of Preacher individually on Blu-ray, so it would be nice if there was a box set out there to make the show a little bit more accessible to people. I also watched The Rehearsal on HBO Max, created by Nathan Fielder. It's a show where he creates elaborate rehearsal environments where people can practice what to say about uncomfortable topics. It's strange how you can momentarily get caught up in the fake lives that Nathan creates and be emotionally invested in what's happening, and then catch yourself and see through it when their acting is a bit forced or the situation is so over the top that it's comical. You can think of everyone as just acting or pretending to be a character when they're doing the rehearsal, but then in other instances, like when you watch a normal dramatic film, it seems easier to become emotionally invested in that reality because of the context you're seeing it in. So not only is Nathan seeing how fast the actors can get absorbed in the rehearsal, but it's also a testament to the viewer on how fast the suspension of disbelief can be enacted upon them. I also watched the miniseries The Little Drummer Girl, directed by Park Chan-wook, starring Florence Pugh and Alexander Skarsgård. It's about Pugh's character, who is an English actor that gets a job as an undercover spy for Israel inside of a Palestinian terrorist cell in the late 1970s. I feel like you have to have a bit of prior knowledge to the Israeli and Palestinian conflict to understand everything about the show. So I was a little bit confused at times, but it was very enjoyable. Florence Pugh delivers an awesome performance, and the rest of the cast is great as well. Park Chan-wook does a decent job here, but I feel like he's not having as much fun or being as experimental in his directing compared to some of his other stuff. I was able to get this 4K steelbook from Plain Archive off eBay because it sold out immediately from their site. So if you're a big physical media collector, I recommend getting it quick before the prices go up. You can also stream it on AMC+. Next, I watched It Follows, directed by David Robert Mitchell, starring Micah Monroe. It took me forever to finally watch this, and is so much better than I thought it would be. The concept for the antagonist is so fresh, and it had some genuinely creepy moments. I've heard some people complain about the inconsistencies for the rules of the supernatural being, but to me, that just adds to the unpredictability of it. It will always follow you no matter what, and it changes forms to trick and attack you. Since you see it transform into the same people a couple of times, I think it has different forms for different situations and starts to learn and adapt the longer it follows you for. Music from Disaster Piece was phenomenal and pairs perfectly with the cinematography. I picked this up on Blu-ray and I can't wait to see more films from this director. I also watched Blackbird on Apple TV, created by Dennis Lehane, starring Taron Egerton and Paul Walter Hauser. Honestly, I almost gave up on this 3 episodes in, but episode 4 was good enough to keep my interest. Everything about the show is decent, but it seemed to be running through the motions in a way. The high points were from Larry and Jimmy's interactions, of course, but it didn't entice me as much as I'd hoped. I don't want to spoil the ending, but there were some moments that just felt cheesy to me, and it never got as dark as I was expecting. Next, I made a double feature of 2 films starring Vanessa Paradis, Elisa and Knife Plus Heart, with the former being directed by Jean Becker and the latter being directed by Jan Gonzalez. I liked her acting and character much more in Eliza. It's about an older girl in an orphanage that pretty much just goes around Paris running little cons on guys and having fun with her friends. I wish they had a little more fun with the music and the cinematography, but I overall enjoyed it. Knife Plus Heart is about a woman who runs a gay adult film company and the mystery of how men in her films keep getting murdered. I like the concept of this film a little more than the actual film itself, but it was still very good. The main score was amazing and ridiculously underutilized. I kept waiting for a scene with that beautiful score in the background while the killer stalked and murdered a victim, so I think that aspect of the film could have been a lot better. I got both of these films on Blu-ray from Vinegar Syndrome, and the limited edition artwork for both are incredible. I also finally saw Banshees of Inisherin, directed by Martin McDonagh. I mean, what else is there to say? McDonagh never misses, and being able to see the trio with Gleeson and Farrell again is a treat to witness. I'll address a heavy spoiler, so if you haven't seen this yet, please go watch it first, and I'll continue as if you've seen the film. Martin's ability to blend dramatic and philosophical ideas with humor and comedy is incredible. The island setting is so beautiful, and it makes it almost like an old fable or folk story. Gleeson's detachment from Farrell is of course very abrupt, and he's a little harsher than he needs to be, but I love his reasoning. Gleeson is feeling nihilistic about the meaning of his life and what he will leave behind. As an introvert, I can relate to his pursuit of silence. In the course of the film, I assumed he would at least have to cut one finger off, but I was shocked when he cut all 5 off of one hand. Of course, that means he won't be able to play the fiddle at all now, so I just kept thinking, why would he go so far to get Farrell to leave him alone? There's a small deleted scene from earlier in the film that shows Gleeson having trouble composing and getting frustrated with himself. I'm not sure if I should treat this scene as canon or not, but I think it adds to the melancholic aspect of the character. I think he wants to prove to himself that he is taking the craft seriously and wants to show some dedication to it. When he cut off the one finger but could still somewhat play, if you think about it from a legacy's perspective, the four-fingered fiddle-playing legend from Ireland would leave a much more lasting impression. Maybe that's what he was hoping would happen at first, but once he saw he couldn't play well with four fingers, he finally grasps the reality of what he's done. Maybe a little part of him thinks he isn't very good anyways and won't get any better now, so not having any fingers at all is a good excuse to himself to not have to try anymore. There's so much to unpack with this film, and I haven't even touched on the brilliant side characters. I think this is a film that you can watch over and over and learn something new every time, and I plan to do exactly that. I watched this on Blu-ray, and I really wish it had got an immediate 4K release so it could take advantage of how beautifully it's shot. I also played High on Life on Xbox, developed by Squanch Games. This was created by Justin Roiland, and I know there's recent controversy about him, but for now I'm just gonna focus on the game itself, which was a blast. This new wave of comedic games that have surfaced in recent years really take advantage of the unique medium that is video games. Like the Stanley Parable or the South Park games, the fourth wall breaking is always different enough to stay fresh, but really immersive and hilarious. They are able to circumvent normal tropes in video games with humor, and it's really fun to just see what will happen next. The amount of dialogue they add to random characters and situations in the world make it really fun to explore and look for Easter eggs. Some of the most excitement and intrigue I've had in recent years has come from projects from Squanch Games. They have some other really great games, so please support them so they can continue to make great content. I also finished reading the manga series Happiness, written by Shuzo Oshimi. It's about a young high school student who gets attacked one night by a vampire girl, and she gives him the choice to live with what he'll become or die. Usually vampire narratives are played out, but whatever your most optimistic ideas would be for this kind of story, it succeeds them. It isn't just about the vampirial aspects of their lives, and it has a lot of great characters and storylines, and I didn't anticipate where the plot would end up going. Oshimi is exceptional at drawing emotional expressions on his characters and makes them spring to life off the page. I bought all 10 volumes of this off Amazon, and I can't wait to read more from this author. So these are most of the films and other entertainment I've watched this month, and you can follow me on Letterboxd if you want to see a full list. Let me know if you've seen any of these films and what you've thought of them. Thanks for watching.